Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for July 12th, 2018. Thank you all very much for coming. This is our second meeting as a board on our Thursday night meetings, and I think our 11th meeting since you started.
You must have missed a few.
I missed a few, yeah. No, we've met 3 other times in planning meetings on the posted Monday morning meetings, and for those of you who have attended, thank you very much. And our goal is to give you a brief update as we go along of what we've been doing, some of the topics that we've covered in our planning meetings since the new board was formulated at our last meeting. So we're going to go through those. There'll be the update in a couple of minutes, but we have a very full agenda this evening, so we're going to get right to our first order of business, and that is the propane tank installation hearing with Chief Hughes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
As required by law, when you get over a certain gallonage of propane for an installation, it requires the Board of Selectmen to have a hearing, open the hearing, and notify about it and so forth. And it requires the blessing of the board to approve or disapprove a license. And the license doesn't necessarily mean it grants the installation. There's also a permit that will come along later, if approved by the board under the fire inspector. So we're here in reference a resident building a new house at 95 Farm Street, and they're asking for permission to put in 6,000-gallon underground propane tanks. We do have a few in town already, but not quite 6,000 gallons. We do have 4 on some tubes and so forth. So this is not a new process to the board, maybe to some of you new members, but with that, I'd like to introduce Jeff. He's from Medway Oil and Propane. He's been the contractor supposedly hired by the resident to do the installation work. Jeff is one of the best in the business. I say one of them, I just say that, but I believe he's better than that. And then Dave Tyberry, the fire department fire inspector, and Dave is very familiar with this. It seems to be the thing that's happening in this day and age. A lot more people are going to propane and so forth. We've seen the numbers up in the last at least 2 years, the way the economy's going and so forth. So with that, I'll entertain any questions, or maybe I'll have Dave and Jeff do a little presentation. Dave has a site plan up there. I visited the site plan. I'm here really for the support of fire inspector. He does his job very well. I very rarely question anything he does. He's been doing it for many, many years. So I'd leave it to that.
Perfect.
If you like that.
Well, this is what Craig said. We have, the Meadows has a little legal, it's 2,000 gallons, you can have a permit. Over 2,000 gallons, you need to get a license from the licensing authority, which in this town happens to be the Board of Selectmen. We have the Meadows, which has over that, I think they have 6,000 or 8,000 gallons. We have a house on Farm Street that has 6,000 gallons. Jeff did the one on Farm Street. This is going to be the same exact thing. The Meadows is a little different.
It sounded familiar to me. It was
Yeah.
the other Soderheim.
Yeah.
Right, I remember that.
This is going to be the same as that.
Okay.
The Meadows, they're individual tanks, like there's 2 houses to 1 tank or 3 houses to 1 tank. It's relatively safe, it's relatively simple. The fire department will oversee the whole operation. I mean, they dig the hole, they put the tanks, and the tanks will be tied down. There's safety devices, so if somebody breaks a line, all the propane won't escape. I'll let Jeff explain what he's going to do. He can do it better than I can.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. So the chief and David are correct. Anytime we were at 2,000 or over, the land actually applies a special license, which is under you guys. So you guys will grant a license to allow us to install anything over the 2001 limit. At that point, We go in, we apply for a permit from the fire department, and then David oversees everything that we do. Similar to 3638 Farm, which was the other one we did. And David and I believe Chief were pleased with the way that came out. First and foremost is safety for us. I'm a third generation owner, and I'm not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize my little company in that way. And so because of that, if there's going to be any questions at all, we're going to address them immediately. And if David has any concerns, or Chief has concerns, we immediately take care of it. The job we did prior, we were pretty darn proud of it because that came out awesome. And there hasn't been any issue. We take the National Fire Protection 54 and 58 are the two governing rules for us, and we actually use those as our baseline. We go above and beyond, again, for the safety reason. Not all problems, I have problems and questions.
It's a national standard.
Mhm.
Everybody follows it. Jeff, I've seen his work is, he goes over and above what the code calls for.
Dave or Jeff, feel free to either answer the question. With regards to the house that you referenced, the 3638, there were 3 buildings. This house has 3 buildings as well, a large riding facility, the main house, and a smaller house, is that correct?
It's a hockey rink.
It's a hockey
Hockey
rink,
rink.
a hockey rink and a house.
Hockey rink.
Hockey is-
Have we ever been invited to a hockey rink?
It has a hockey rink and it has the main house and then another barn that they're gonna run a propane tank.
So it's a barn, a hockey rink, and the main house.
I mean, but the primary reason for the big load is the generator. It's a massive generator that's going to use 25 gallons of propane per hour. So, because they have to keep the chillers running for the
The
hockey
hockey rink.
because that melts, it's a problem. You got all the ammonia and the refrigerants, so you've got a huge generator. There's a couple in town actually that are large generators, and when they're running, they're consuming massive amounts of fuel. And so you don't want to have the truck back every 15 minutes, so
Right.
you have to have storage, as well as the ability to provide the vapor that the generator needs. So you can't do it with 1 or 2 tanks, you need multiple tanks in order to do that.
Is there a way where you have it situated? Is there a main line that runs to the generator, and then I assume that's
We call those home runs. Every
Home runs.
single unit, the generator, the hockey rink, the house, the barn, all have home runs from the tank. What we do is we build a manifold. And one of the things that we'll do is we have a main shutoff, so God forbid there's ever a problem. I don't want, where's the shutoff? So you go right to the board, there's a main shutoff that kills all the tanks and it kills all the lines. Now, in the event that there's a problem at each individual place, you can turn off the individual lines and not have to worry about the rest. So if something went wrong in the generator, you can shut that line off while leaving everything else active.
as long as you, Dave, and Chief know where the main shutoff is?
And the homeowners are instructed as well. That's what caretakers.
Yeah, everybody knows, we've gone over, everyone that's been put in like this, the fire department, everybody, the chief takes everybody up, shows them what's going on. There's also on the line, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, there'll be a valve, if something breaks, if there's an excess flow, the valve will shut everything down. So if somebody broke a line, instead of just propane coming out into the air, it will just dissipate.
My understanding is the prior house was about 22,000 square feet. Is this about the same, this project?
The house, the other one, 3638,
3638,
a little bit less.
a little bit less. So this is a little bit less,
Yeah,
this
but
project.
36, 38, he wanted his pool heater, he wanted to be self-sufficient up there for 3 or 4 months.
Right. I
But it means he
remember
wanted to
that
run
when
his,
they
he
came
wanted to
here.
run his
Right.
pool, he's got a generator that'd run half the town of Dover.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
he,
put him on there. Yeah,
No
but we know what it is, yeah, no
These
problem.
people have a hockey rink.
Hockey rink.
and you'll notice on the application where there's a restriction, put a restriction on that it's propane to be used for residential use and accessories only. Basically, this license then is going to only allow him to have propane. So license goes with the land, and that could, you don't want him to set up you put the restriction so that when you have it all, so they can't put in a filling station. It's all it can be, and that's what the permit will say also,
Just for home use.
just for home use.
Got it.
Because
Yeah,
that,
residential.
the license goes with the land, just like it did in all the others.
So I'm used to, I have some propane tanks, but I don't think they come up to 6,000 gallons. So I'm just wondering, just for context, how common are 6,000 gallon propane tanks for residential purposes?
In the States, we're doing other towns, we're seeing more and more.
You're seeing more and more, that in that size. So it's not as unusual as it might have been a few years ago.
Well, right
But
now,
it's not one tank.
Yeah, no, I got it,
it'll
yeah.
be
Yeah, no, yeah, no, I
six
understand.
1,000 gallon tanks. And, you know, at one point, a 500 gallon tank was, that's all people wanted. Then we got to, they wanted 1,000. Now we're getting to people putting in 2 1,000 gallon tanks. Nobody would know because they don't need to come for license. They get a permit by law, we just give them the permit. But more and more people are doing that. We have 3 or 4 houses that are just putting it in. They have big generators. They don't want to go more than that, but they're putting in that volume.
One of the other reasons too is fuel oil. I'm a third generation oil man. Actually, my grandfather started our company, and we always poo-pooed propane or natural gas. But we've all seen what it's done, to the environment. We've also seen what it's done to the earth, the ground, the spills and whatnot. Granted, fuel oil will just break down eventually, unlike gasoline or chemicals. But the point is, it has a taint to it now, where propane does not. And with oil, I can do heat and hot water somewhat reliably. With propane, I can do everything. Heat, hot water, cooking, fireplace, dryer, generator, grills, pool heaters, you name it. We can run everything, fire pits, everything off of one fuel source. Extremely efficient, extremely clean, underground buried with no environmental impact. So it's just becoming the fuel of choice. It really is.
In new homes, I would say 99% of the new homes that are being built are going with propane. You meet the energy requirements. They can't do it with oil. Well, they could do it, but it's not cost effective. They go with propane and everybody's doing it.
For example, the next town over Westwood will only allow you one location of fuel per lot. So you can have one oil tank away, you can't have multiple propane tanks if you want to have a pool heater or a grill and whatnot. So it makes it kind of central to have the one tank and then be able to feed everything off. In this case, we're going to have that multiple of one and be able to feed everything from that one location. So if there is a problem, and that's what happened when Westwood, they ran into a fire, they shut off the tank, they was at the location of the fire, and they said, oh, the other tank on the other side, which they had no idea was even there. So this way here, David and Chief are going to be right on this, and they'll know exactly where the location is. It's on the plan. When it's done, we do an as-built, so if there's ever an issue, everybody will know everything. Plus, we didn't mention this, those tanks are tested periodically according to code underground to prevent their corrosion and their degradation. And we monitor that, provide the customer and their insurance company with the results to make sure that there's no problems with the tanks underground.
Do you encapsulate the tank in any type of a plastic type?
No, sand. But
Sand.
the tanks do come from the factory with a mill, a multiple mill, heavy corrosion prevented coating. And so, and lately the tanks we've been getting over the last couple of years are coming in and they're actually they're protecting them with sheepskin underneath. We pick them up and we're using coated hooks so that there's no scratches. And if we do find a scratch, we have to make sure that we paint it so that there's no exposed steel. But the anode, and there's 2 per 1,000 gallon tank, will protect that, similar to an anode in a boat. Everybody has that.
It's a safety thing. The anode takes all the corrosion before the tank, and they check them. They can,
We monitor that per mass code. Actually, it's a federal code. We monitor that as well.
Great. And Jeff, your company's Medway Oil and
Federal code.
Oil and Propane. Great, thank you. Thank you. Chief?
One last thing, just with Jeff, I know he's been working with surrounding towns, and when there are big problems or issues, a lot of towns, fire departments will call, reach out to him when there's a certain troublesome situation. And he approached us over a year ago, Jeff did, and he came out and he gave a simple 2.5, 3 hour presentation to all of our department members. He brought all his trucks, all his equipment, and all his personnel at no charge, and it was quite informational for all of us to learn even more about this. So, just a note.
Thank you.
He's very well respected, at least in Norfolk County.
One of the reasons we did that was because of that reason they spoke about earlier. So much propane and no experience with it. What do you do if there's a problem? These guys are trained in the basics. They go to the school in Stowe, and that's wonderful. But if something, if they can get in there and stop a problem, now what do we do? Especially with people owning their own tanks. Who do you call if there's a problem? So So now they know that they can always rely on us, and we're more than happy to give them the help.
That's great, thank you. Any questions?
No?
No, good.
I will accept a motion to accept.
We get a comment from the,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
If I
Just
may,
in-
I'm
Sure.
not an expert in this, but let me just confirm, what is the acreage at 95 Pond Street? How many acres are we talking
It's
about?
not,
Both the town engineer and the building commissioner were involved with this, and I got both of their blessings for acreage and for zoning. There was some questions. There's two separate lots. And there is, I don't think this shows the acreage. I don't know, it doesn't show the acreage.
Approximately.
I'm going to say, Justin, probably at least 4.
At least
I'm
four
gonna say,
acres.
I think it's more like,
Well, I didn't want to go higher, but.
Well, and then if I
no, it's
may,
because the former owners bought some of the
Right.
well,
land
the former
behind the
owner,
Chase.
3638 is a huge lot.
No, I'm talking about 95. They bought some of the Chase
It's mine.
property.
That's all.
95 bought some of the Chase property, the former owners of 95.
yeah, they did.
So, right, so I say it's in excess of 10 acres.
You think it's, okay, so
I didn't want to
the
say that.
issue about abutters, having lived in a town where there was a propane explosion about a block from my house, I'm fairly concerned about abutters having to deal with the possibility, however remote, about a propane explosion. So as far as the nearest house to these various buildings are concerned, how far are we talking?
That's the house, it's.
Well, I can tell you by bike ride, because I've done it. From the Markins house to the Burke's house, it's about 400 yards, maybe more.
So you think the butters would not be impacted then if it was?
And the land goes back
The abutters,
that way.
all the abutters, a list with, a letter was sent out to all the abutters and just got the receipts notifying them of this hearing, and that they
Mhm.
were, and there has been no
No.
objection.
Okay.
And, you know, it's safe. I personally think it's safer than natural gas. Because natural gas, if it breaks in the ground, if a pipe breaks, it's following it right into the house. Propane will dissipate a lot quicker. And I've never seen a propane line break. Usually they break because you dig them up, you break it, you dig it, take it right out of the ground, and you're all set. I don't think there's anything, we have so many little propane tanks, I'd be more concerned about the 250-gallon tanks that we have all over town that tip over or break with a 500 seat. Actually, I'm more afraid of the propane gas bills.
Yeah, and look at it, we've got 20 pounds of 4 gallons of propane in that, 3 feet underneath or less, 2 feet underneath the flame. And so that really concerns me. People are very careless with that because we have no control of that. Versus what we're going to do now is going to be controlled and through all the permitting process, totally watched over by Double Fire. And actually the gas inspector as well. He has a huge hand in this.
Thank you. Just want to, Dave, one second. Before I go any further, I just want to say to the people at home, and I had asked for a little bit of feedback from our first meeting if there was anything we could improve in these types of dialogue. And one of the things that our thousands of viewers at home asked if we could identify. 3? Well, 3,000?
At least
2.
200.
There's like 4.
The 6 people watching at home asked me if we could identify the people who were speaking. Justine Kent.
And you're in 23 Hayden.
23 Hayden, thank
And
you.
my last question, if I may, thank you for allowing the public, Mr. Chair, to ask questions. I think it always helps to have more questions and just not, accept
Sure.
the status quo. You said this is for residential use only? Who is to monitor this from not morphing into commercial use?
They'd have to come back to the fire department for a permit to do that. I mean, if they wanted to do it illegally, yeah. but-
It'd be the neighbors who basically
Right.
complain, basically, right?
You know, it's like anything. You gotta, we'll watch it, the building official will watch it, if there's a complaint, it'll be looked into. But to go into a commercial, I gotta believe that somebody would see right away.
Well, I'm just saying, there are a lot of stuff that starts as a residential thing in our town. Because of the acreage involved, and that you don't have butters as a town that I grew up in, where you're like 50 feet next to your neighbor. Things can often go on for quite some time before it becomes obvious that it's a commercial use as opposed to a residential use. So I'm just saying that's one thing I'd like to make sure that the building inspector, whoever is on top of stuff, not just you guys, I respect your opinion, but I do think that's, I don't think there are many people who build hockey rinks simply, I could be wrong, for the
I think the other
residential
thing
use.
that we didn't mention, and the control is, with the license, the homeowner, or the person who owns the license, has to go and register once a year with the town clerk. So they have to put down, stipulate what they're doing. That's where you'll have control. You know, they come in, they fill out the license, they fill out the form to renew their license, and that's it. You see they're coming in, they'll come in and they're notified, hey, you gotta get in here and do this, or then they lose the license after a period of time. So that's the control we have over it, to make sure that they are doing, and I'm going to be quite honest here, the building official is going to be very careful what he does. He doesn't have jurisdiction over the property. He's got to notify the fire chief if he thinks that's something, and then we go from there. He can go in as a zoning, but you can't just go on somebody's property.
Understood. Understood.
So if the Board of Selectmen were to approve this, could it be subject to, again, that it be for residential purpose only?
It's on there, it's
It
on
is.
the application. It's on the application, and the license, the permit that they get will also state propane for residential use and accessory building being the hockey rink. So they can't set up a filling station or anything like that.
And the owner did say that we'd have a state hockey championship in about 10 years.
Well, we have that to look forward to. Any other comments, questions from our audience? Robin? No?
Yep, good.
None? I'm good. Robin, good. I would entertain a motion to approve the application for propane installation for 95 Farm Street.
I would just amend your motion to specify that it's for household use only.
I think
It's on the application.
it does say on the application, does
To
there,
approve that application, it's said right on it.
it does say on my sheet here, Robin, residential use only.
Right,
for
so
this
I
one.
I've seen
So-
the application, it says it very clearly at the bottom.
It says it's for
It
residential
specifies
use
purpose.
and accessory buildings.
Mhm.
Okay.
So,
So
I'll
moved.
second that.
is there a second?
Good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Chief,
very much for your time.
Jeff, Dave, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Welcome, DA. Our next order of business, the trustees of the reservation at Noanet and the leash policy, and DA Hayden is here. And who do you have with you?
I'm Hayden, I'm the general manager for the trustees in the Charles River Valley portfolio. And with me is Mike Francis, who is our stewardship manager and is really our expert in, the land conservation, the trails, the actual activity on the
Great.
properties.
Hello, Mike, welcome.
Thank you.
So we actually asked to come to this meeting a couple of months ago, so we're thrilled to be here. And I just wanted to be sure that we could come on a fairly regular basis, maybe twice a year, to give you some updates on what's happening on the properties here in Dover, because we have 620 acres at Noanet, as you all know, and another 109 acres at Powasset. So that is a large swath of land in town, and as responsible stewards of that land, I think it's important that we meet and just share with you what's going on. So if you allow me the opportunity to give
Thank
you
you.
a little bit of an update.
We're glad you're here. We had a terrific time. Robin approved the beer tent, the 3-day beer tent with, she was overzealous in her approval of it.
Oh,
And
I see.
it was a great weekend.
But this evening, I think we're here on a serious note because, as the Board of Selectmen, we certainly are approached by citizens, and I'm sure you all are aware that there are many citizens in Dover that are upset by the change in the leash policy at Noanet Woods. And so, sitting here on the board and being on the board for many years and thinking of trustees as our really good neighbors, I was surprised that nobody had reached out to us prior to signs going up about the leash policy, and to give us a little bit of background as to why the change, because it does impact many residents of Dover, many that have lived here all their lives and have enjoyed taking their dogs into Noanet off leash and always had appreciated that privilege to be able to do that. So I was hoping that this evening that perhaps you could give us a little bit of background into why the change in policy.
Absolutely. And I'd like to also share with you what's going on at COISIT when we answer your question. So for the past 2 years, there has been a statewide committee at the trustees looking at properties and looking at dog usage on properties. And it was decided that at Noanet, as stewards of that property, and as part of being a good steward of the property, it's important for us to really be sure that when people visit the property, they have a very safe and they have a pleasurable time on these properties. So at Noanet, we have a large group of people who come. Some are dog owners, some are not. We've had some very serious complaints over the past few years, and those were analyzed, and that's what drove the decision. So when that decision was made, we talked to the chief of police. We hoped to meet with the selectmen to let them know, but it was at the time of the election, so the meeting had not been scheduled.
But you have been studying this for 2 years, so
For 2 years, that's right.
So
But
you
the
knew.
decision-
Right.
No, because the decision had not been made. So we also sent news releases to the media. We went and met with the Conservation Commission. So we have tried to get the information out as best we possibly can. I'm sorry that our meeting schedule and the election and the meeting schedule didn't coincide, so we could have briefed you ahead of time. But we have dealt with some people who are very pleased that there is a leash policy. We've dealt with other people who are upset that there's a leash policy. And as a dog owner and a dog lover, I can tell you that I totally get that. And that all of us at the trustees understand that, and that we're happy that many of our other properties do still allow off-leash use. The other change that's happened at Noanet that we wanted to apprise you of is the parking kiosk that's been put at the main entrance. And that's exactly like the one that's at Rocky Woods in Medfield, whereby members of the trustees put their card in the machine. If they're a member, their parking is free. If they're not a member, then there's a $5 charge for the parking. And that helps us to defray some of the stewardship costs that we have on the property.
So again, just, there have been other citizens of Dover that have approached the Board of Selectmen. We understand we're not stewards of the property, but there are some residents in town that felt that for 15 years the town did a lot to support trustees in putting that parking lot on Powasset Street. And they feel, perhaps some of them are not members of trustees, so they cannot park for free. So some people in town, I've gotten a few emails that are upset by the fact that now they have to pay for parking as well, after they were big supporters of trustees putting that parking lot on Powasset Street.
If there are people who feel that way, please feel free to refer them to us.
Okay,
Because we'll
we'll
meet
do
with
that.
them individually, just as we have been since this was announced.
We'll certainly do that. So I know one of the big events at and I know this from the rail trail, is the hunt. So will you still allow the hunt to happen at Noanet now with the leash law?
What we have done, what we started doing for the hunt last year, is that for a certain number of hours, they do a hunt once a year for Noanet Woodlands.
Right.
And they had not been able to hunt the hounds for Noanet because it was so populated with people and dogs and bikes, and it wasn't safe for horses or hounds. So what we have done for that one hunt every year, we started this last year, is we've closed down Noanet Woodlands for 3 hours so that the hunt can go through. and we have people and members of the hunt. We have employees of the trustees and members of the hunt at all of the entrances, and it's posted for a couple of days prior so that the hunt can go through safely, and then the minute the hunt is out, then the woodlands are open again.
Did you entertain any thoughts with regards to segmenting some time for people the general public who have dogs who want to walk off leash?
We did, and we looked at when we were receiving complaints about issues, and at first we were thinking, gee, maybe early morning would be all right, or maybe late in the day would be all right. But the analysis of the information that we received from people who were complaining and were having issues, and I don't think this is the appropriate forum to go through that, but I'll happily talk to you outside of this meeting about the things that have gone on. It was determined that there really was not a safe time like that, Jeff, because the incidents were happening throughout the day.
You mentioned that you spoke, Carol Bowden, the Warren Committee, you mentioned that you spoke with the police chief.
Yes.
And our focus is making sure that town resources are paid for and not increased unnecessarily. Do you anticipate any support from the town in patrolling in Noanet Woods and enforcing these regulations, or is that because it's private property and you're the stewards, that's on you?
Yeah, that's perfectly honest. It is a private piece of property, and we've actually hired additional staff. We have a ranger now in the ranger station so that they can answer questions both about the dog policy, but also about the parking kiosk. And then we also have a group of volunteer rangers who walk through the property so that they can really see what's happening and help people.
Okay, great.
So that might help people being lost in there and
Yeah,
say,
exactly.
where am I?
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
it's like, do you really come in here without looking at the map?
I know.
They do.
Can you tell me where my car is? And they're completely on the opposite end of Carol.
Carol.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
Mrs. Elizabeth.
2 Cross Street. A couple of questions. Given the charge, small as it is, however, but nevertheless it's a charge, would you anticipate that we might see a situation that led to the effort to create the parking lot of police in the first place, which is the over parking at Noanet at the tennis courts in Dover?
We have been monitoring the numbers of cars because we have a car counter there, and we have not seen any difference. That's certainly something that we'll continue to monitor. You might be able to comment on that?
You're asking if we would notice a shift in parking, so less, fewer
Right.
cars parking. Happily, the parking lot is still filling, so that hasn't seemed to deter people, and in fact, we've already been increasing trustees membership through that as a benefit, having free parking, so that also has the additional impact for stewardship on the property by having more members in the trustees. So as DA had mentioned, we'll continue to monitor that, work with the town, police chief, parks department, and see if there is anything additional that needs to be addressed.
I'd also like to follow up on something that Robin said earlier about the process of communication with the town and the wonderful partnership that we've had over the decades. Hale Reservation, as you probably know, is in the process of making a strategic plan.
Yes.
They started months and months and months ago, well before they made any decisions, okay, to meet with not only government officials, but many Dover private citizens who have been supportive of open space and so forth over the years. So I would say that there is a good example of how communication early on can really make a difference. And I urge you, as we've had in the past with the trustees, communication is always better the sooner it becomes.
Which is why we'd like to be here on a more regular basis and keep you up to speed.
Great.
If I may, the trustees recently dissolved an advisory committee that I was on for over a decade that had 2 members from Dover, 2 people from Sherburne, people from Midfield. And I do think much of this would have been avoided had you had an advisory group. Increasingly, having given you money for over 30 years, you've become, in my opinion, a top-down organization that does not solicit input from the community. So all I can say, to echo Robin's comments, Carol's comment, the more you can get ground root support for your endeavors, the better off you'll be.
Dia, you mentioned the study that you, to follow up with just what Justine and the comments earlier, give us an idea of the study. How
It was a statewide study. We have, the way the trustees is organized is that there are portfolios of properties around the state. There are 116 properties in the state. So there are then experts, expert teams within the organization. For example, there is a land conservation team, there is an ecology team, there is a trails team, and there is a coastal team. And those are the people who really are responsible for looking at some of these things in depth. And then they pull from the various communities information as to what's happening on the property. So it's something that the trustees doesn't take lightly, because there are dog owners and dog lovers like myself and like many in this room who have been members for many, many years. But that is the way the organization operates.
in the other properties, what's been the experience in terms of policing the leash policy?
Well, we're not a police force, and we hope we never are a police force. That's not our mission. Our mission is to preserve and protect the land and to be sure that it is being well stewarded, and that the biodiversity is there, and that the animal habitat is there, and that the trails are well taken care of. I think Mike can talk a little bit about that as well, as to the work that's been done on the property this year as a result of some of the storms that we've had. So those are our priorities. We won't police anything, but we do have rangers. And we do post very clearly what the regulations are on all of our properties, whether you can build a campfire or take a dog or have a picnic or go into animal fencing. So that's the best that we can do. And then we hope that people are honorable and cooperate with us.
Our rangers are trained in educating our visitors, taking that approach rather than policing approach, as Dia mentioned. Touching on the stewardship of the property, as you all know, this winter was quite long. It extended into and through the month of March, and all of our properties had quite a bit of storm damage. And so with 17 properties in this Charles River Valley portfolio, we prioritize Noanet, Woodlands, and Poison very highly because of the size of the property and the number of people that we engage at both properties. So fortunately, we were able to get through the trail clearing and clearing of all the blowdowns on the trails fairly quickly with the help of staff and a number of volunteers that help control the properties. Highlight the trails, mark up the trail maps where all of the blowdowns are. That gives us kind of a head start, just so we know. Although this time around, pretty much every trail had blowdowns on it. But it took us a little bit to get through them all, but we were able to clear Noanet at the top of the list. And we're also monitoring beaver activity on the property. We've come before the Conservation Commission before on that, and we'll probably come before them again very soon to construct a culvert device to protect culverts from getting blocked, and also to prevent beavers from falling through and down into the wheel pit at the lower mill dam. It's happened recently, about a month or two ago, and has happened in the past. So hopefully, working with the Conservation Commission, we can install a device that's usually pretty successful in preventing beavers from doing that type of activity. Yeah, we are positive about maintaining Noanet.
It's a great property. It's truly a treasure, for the town. And my family, my wife, my kids, dogs, we use it every day.
Thank you.
Yeah, it really is. And as a rider, I know you both know that I'm one of those horrible mountain bike riders, but it's great to have, and we try to do everything we possibly can to coexist from a rider standpoint with everyone else. And I know it's hard to do. It's a hard job to please everyone.
While you're here today, can I say one question? Do you plan on making any changes to your policies at Peninsula and Needham?
I'm sorry?
Do you plan on making any changes to your policies at your property in Needham?
Charles River Peninsula.
Charles River Peninsula.
We don't have
Right, we're going, through statewide, all of our properties are being analyzed for what our dog policy should be. And as the DA had mentioned, they're different in each property. So currently, Charles River Peninsula is managed for grassland habitat. So it's important that we protect that habitat during the nesting season. So that will be at the top of the list for managing the property that way.
So that means no dogs.
Presumably during, the nesting season, the dogs are not affecting them. Because they're nesting there.
And nesting season is?
Nesting season ends July 15th.
We're running to that right now, of course, because we have nesting birds in the back of the property,
Right.
and we're waiting to bring the cattle in.
And haying our fields. So fields that are managed for grassland habitat are not hayed before July 15th.
What about Pegan Hill? What about Pegan Hill? What's the rule about dogs?
In terms of dog use, I'd have to look back to see where we are with that. And these, the approval process, the review and approval process goes through the various boards and the trustees, so the stewardship board, the stewardship committee, and I believe the board of directors also receives the final review of these properties. So I'm not
Sure where we are.
Do you mean, Justine, where is Pegan Hill in terms
Well,
of
the
being
access is
accepted?
in South Natick. However, about half the property, more or less, is in Dover.
Dover.
So, for instance, I don't have dogs now, but I have had dogs in the past. So you park at a fairly 10-car parking lot off of Pleasant Street, and you can access it absolutely beautiful. And thank you very much, Mike. Since I took about 20 people up there a couple of months ago, you cleared the trails, thank you, beautiful view. And at the time, I was up there with about 20 people. There were 2 people with non-leash dogs. Didn't pose a problem, there weren't many of us there, but I was just curious, since we're talking about properties that are, Carol mentioned one Needham, I sometimes go to Pegan Hill, sometimes Noanet, so that was my question.
Mhm. And with regards to just the trustees of the reservation DA that you're a trustee of, are there numerous segmented trustees like yourself in all these other properties?
The state is divided into management units. So there is someone in charge of the various management units. So in our management unit, we have 17 properties. So, and our management use is called the Charles River Valley, although we have 2 outliers, one in Uxbridge and one in Southborough.
Got it.
So,
Great.
would you all like to know what's going on at POSIT, or have you heard enough about the trustees?
Love to know what's going on.
Well, I just wanted to let you know that we're drawing some wonderful family activity because we have opened a children's animal barnyard in the back of the property where the original pig runs were. So we now have sheep and goats and bunnies and chickens and piglets. And we have hired an animal educator, a barnyard educator, who is there on Saturdays and is there on Wednesday afternoons to go through specific activities with the children, so it's very hands-on. And then they do a barnyard craft as well, and we're seeing great reception to that. It's really wonderful, so I would encourage you to come and visit it, and we'd be happy to give you a tour. But POSIT is becoming very busy on Saturdays with that. The vegetables have never looked better, so shop the farm stand. And our CSA members are very happy as well, so.
Can you please extend the hours of the cafe?
Oh, sure, okay, that's easy, yeah.
I also took a cooking class there over the winter.
Did you enjoy it?
It was tongues, tacos, and
You went to that one?
yeah, there were only 3 of us at it.
It required a very brave soul to take that.
Right, and it was really interesting because it was all about whole animal butchery and how you should eat all parts of the
Tail to
animal.
snout,
Right.
yeah.
And if you didn't think about what you were eating, it actually tasted really good. Right,
So we're doing a culinary tour of China this fall, so you can come to that one.
right. But, the woman in charge was also telling me that if you have a group of 12 people and there's a specific cooking region you would like to familiarize yourself with, that there were opportunities for her to organize that for that.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
which was-
And they're very popular.
Right, that was not a popular class.
Understandable.
Thank you both for coming.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate your
Thank you
time.
for the
Really
presentation.
interesting. I mean, all new to me, it's just terrific. I don't have a beaver, worrying about beavers is not something that I usually,
You're doing a lot, at Rocky Woods, you have quite the active beaver
Oh, there's
community.
quite the beaver condominium complex.
I've seen what they can do.
Right,
But each
right.
one of our properties almost has
Beavers,
beaver
deceivers.
or
But they don't use propane, so we're okay.
If you
So,
go
I
there
think
at
they're working on it.
sunset,
Yeah.
and it's kind of beautiful to watch them, because they start
Yeah,
coming
They
out.
do. They're amazing.
Right, but you have to get out of there before it gets dark, just to, but it was just really, right, kind of neat to watch them come out in the water and.
Hi, Dad.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Our next order of business, the Board of Health discussion with neighbors in the water supply. Jerry Clark,
Yes, sir.
how are you this evening, sir?
I wish I'd known it was going to be so efficient, I probably would have taken medication earlier. I previously offered all of you a copy of the request for information
Right.
that was
Yep.
distributed yesterday.
Yep.
We followed up with the 5 prospective vendors today. I will tell you without naming names that one of the vendors is extremely familiar with the town of Dover. We view that vendor as a very good prospect, but some of the others may also. If there's any question, this was prepared by a number of us with legal background, one of whom is an attorney for the federal government, so I think it was well vetted. The schedule of this is that the deadline is July 23. We will plan on issuing a request for proposal, which would actually go to the expenditure of the funds from Article 12 of the town meeting on the 15th of August. So we will be anticipating coming to you to get to the town council, so that town council has an opportunity to review our RFP, even though our RFP and the contract are not subject to state government guidelines because of the nature of the work. But we want to make sure that everything's in approval.
And the timeline for there is somewhere around
And
August
then
15th.
we expect to issue it on the 15th. The deadline will be September 12th. And we hope to award it on or before October 3rd, with work then commencing, getting us at least 2 good working months before the winter sets in, allowing us to set the monitoring wells.
Understood, and understood the timeline. Are we deviating in any way from the normal RFP request process that we would go through the Board of Selectmen?
I checked with David. The nature of the job, the nature of the individual company being hired,
Sit down.
I really,
You'd rather stand?
is such that we will adhere to, in general, to the guidelines, and I talked to David about this, but in terms of the necessity of having it go through the standard state government process, there was no need.
That's exact.
Okay.
May I add also that Matthew Greer, last month or the month before, I asked Greer to send on over some RFPs that we have done from the Selectmen's office that do adhere to all our state regulations and town regulations. And I did go through those and pass on to another committee member who is also an attorney and who's put together the RFI and now the RFP. Various clauses that I thought that we've had in various town RFPs that though may not be legally required are good things to have.
Right.
So I think we will be
Even
incorporating that in.
Even at the end, just before this was released to the 5 prospective companies, the cover letter that we wrote
added certain provisions just so as to make sure that there was no liability on the part of the town, no obligation. So we are mindful of that very much.
In essence, Jerry and Carol, that's the genesis of my question, to be mindful that we are not exposed in any way, even.
That's well understood, sir.
So maybe for the viewers at home, Greer, can you just explain why this is exempt? Is it because it's a
There
water?
are various exemptions.
Okay.
Department of Public Health types of initiatives are
Okay.
exempt from that.
Okay,
And once again, for,
they just are, okay.
There is a multitude, actually.
Okay.
That's-
So, following on that, I point out two things. Again, I've distributed them to you. The warrant article 12 arose because of the concerns starting in 2016 as to the intense drought that occurred. And a number of citizens having question as to whether this was a one-off event or was this a trend. We've discussed that. We've explained to the public the nature of the trend. I don't want to get into that now, but to give you a sense of the difference between public perception and fact, and I don't know how well this will serve. You'll have to tell me. If you see the green area,
We can see the green.
the green area are the two quarters prior to current as to whether or not Massachusetts was approaching a drought. You can see there was no problem. In fact, there was 100% of normal precipitation up through April 10th.
your tie just got 8 inches wide.
Well, then, what happened then, Jerry?
Then, the week of July 3rd, you can see that the yellow color, that 27% of the state was now approaching a drought. And this is as of yesterday morning now, which is different from what you will read in the papers. This is right up to date. You can see the orange color. This current week, irrespective of the heavy rains, we've all said, oh, this will bring us back to normal. Well, it turns out that when 50% of the rain evaporates or runs off into the rivers and basins, and you're left with that other 50%, which may or may not percolate, we are now approaching a drought.
Thank you.
Would you mind?
You can.
Thank you.
In light of that,
This is in the package to this evening.
yeah, I sent it to you.
Right.
In light of that, and because the Board of Health has no authority for regulation, nor at this time seeks that, but wishes to advise the citizenry of what is going on, we are using the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection and their advisories to post at various locations around the town. The Highway Department is producing these signs. Depending upon the nature of the conditions, these signs will be posted as advisory to citizens to consider that maybe a ground lawn for a few weeks, which will recover, might be better than draining their well. So those are the actions we're taking with that. Just quickly, and I don't want to take any time on this, I'm sure you're aware of these. Last year we had funds to purchase very advanced exact GIS locating devices to know exactly where a well is, exactly where a septic system is. And that's necessary because we've been running into a number of scenarios where the information is dreadfully wrong, even though it's been done by an engineer. Some of it's past history, even current. And we're moving, just today, we are starting to look to integrating that. If I could get your forbearance, if we could bring, there's a second item in your agenda that's 2 items later. Since I really need to get out of here.
So
The vote on the 30,000 for the grant.
We did that.
To make this understandable, this is money that we requested in April of 2017 of our state senator and our state representative, both of whom put it into the state budget for this previous year, fiscal 18, ending this past June, and who specified it was for the Board of Health to pursue these various initiatives that we have underway already, and to assist the expense of that. Although we are mostly totally volunteer effort, there have been expenses, some of them are town-borne, but we anticipate there will be other costs. So the state, at the very end of the fiscal year, gave us the $30,000. And I would request that you approve that, and that it should be used for the purposes for which the two politicians put it into the state budget.
Was this the 30,000
Yeah.
that we are?
So this is,
Yeah, it's
we're just,
you.
I
it's
approve. So
just the vote here,
vote
so
here.
we're just
I'm
gonna
going to go
this
move
up.
from 7:05 to 7:45, and
Right. So,
this is
right, so we should thank Mr. Clark and the Water Committee, as well as Denise Garlick
And Michael
and
Rush,
Michael Rush,
Michael
who were both instrumental in getting this,
and their chiefs of staff.
right, well, and their staff, instrumental in getting this $30,000 approved in the budget.
What I need you to be sure you understand is this is last year's money.
Right,
right.
right.
Understood. And this is what we signed, you and I
Correct.
signed on
Correct.
two
What
Monday
I
nights
executed
ago.
the documents, you executed the authority.
And we did not speak to each other.
We did not,
Because
no.
it would have been an open meeting.
It was a-
So,
yep.
just to recap very quickly for those at home, and just so we can put a bow on this, Mr. Clark, thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. And I'm going to ask for a motion that we retroactively approve the form that I signed that you gave to us.
We're
that-
accepting the gift.
Accepting the
Yeah,
gift.
we're accepting the
Right, it's
grant.
just part
On
the
behalf
gift
of
policy.
Denise and Mike Rush. Denise Garlick and Mike Rush.
And it's for
And
the
for
Board of
the-
Health specifically to use, right?
I believe we went through the process. We went through the reading of this at our last meeting, correct?
I don't believe we did.
No,
This all happened after our last meeting.
After our last meeting, okay.
So we went in detail in our planning meeting, and the minutes reflect
Reflected it.
the conversation. Mr. Clark came to that meeting,
Yes.
and
And we executed
The
it.
difficulty that the audience may not understand is that this was a funding, although it was allocated in the budget for fiscal year 18, last year. The funding was never given until the week before the end of the fiscal year.
Understood.
So it was a hurry-up effort.
So I'm going to entertain a motion to retroactively accept and expend the Massachusetts Executive Public Office Safety and Security Grant of $30,000.
specifically put in place
Specifically-
for the assessment of water issues in the town of Dover.
Specifically.
Thank you.
I second.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, the good news is, we're back in for another draw for the fiscal year 19.
You don't give up, do you?
No, I
Thank
You're
you, Jerry.
persistent, if not anything else.
Let me add that you had asked me at one of the planning meetings to research further the information that I had supplied you about Elm Bank and the rights to draw water from Elm Bank being exclusive to the citizens of Dover, citizens of Wellesley, citizens of Needham, and citizens of Natick. And that was in regard to an adjacent town where developers were pursuing the access through one of those towns. I'm happy to report to you, after discussion with the Sherborne Planning Board and John Higley, the chairman, and other members, that they have dropped this.
Oh.
And furthermore, talking with Anthony Como, who is responsible party in Natick Public Works, that in point of fact, they came to the conclusion after acquiring various documents that they did not want to be responsive.
Once again, we appreciate your persistence, Mr. Clark.
We do have some other items, you have them on here, but I want to cover two items. Grant opportunities exist. One is one we did not pursue this past April because it just came on us too fast and we would have had to explain things to you, and I just didn't think we had the time, but now we have the time. Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program. This comes under Charles Baker's Executive Order 569. Last year, they fed out over $1 million to 71 communities relative to the need to prepare for vulnerability due to climate change. So worded. So I just want to advise you that we will be sending you a letter for you to send to the state stating that the town is interested in being a certified municipal vulnerability partner. Secondly, 2 years ago, the town of Dover did undertake, with the assistance of the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, the introduction of a hazardous mitigation plan. I'm not aware of any actions that have resulted from that in the 2 years. David, you may be able to tell me. I don't know. I've not pursued it. But the fact of the matter is, it too generates the ability to get much smaller grants, but grants, for things like dealing with the flooding that perennially occurs on Claybrook, as an example. And lastly, I don't think I can speak in detail about it in this open meeting, but we have some compliance issues. We have a number of individuals who refuse to properly maintain their septic systems. One of them has been adamant and vociferous, and we've notified them, and there are risks to their property, there are risks to the adjacent property. That's one example. I have to tell you, happily, we had a hearing several weeks ago with 4 such situations, and 3 of them resulted in very positive outcomes. We had an issue on Pinewood and Taylor Lane, resolving the matter of siting a septic system by finally coming to a conclusion as to who owned which land. We had a situation on Main Street where what was perceived by one of the residents as an active well, and therefore would have had setback requirements forcing the adjacent resident to deal with problems, we were able to get acceptance that in fact it was an abandoned well, and as a result they are currently pursuing filling it under the regulation so that children will be safe from what was a hole in the ground. The Charles River School has kept us informed as they've proceeded. They've been very helpful. I wrote them recently that I was very glad that they were keeping us up to date, and when they reach the conclusion of all their work, they will indeed supply us the complete set of as-bills. So that's working out. We try to be proactive, but we try to work with these various people. There is one more, and I'm afraid it will require us to go to executive session at some point, because it's going to go toward legal matters. It's a very large residence, very expensive residence, which for 3 years has not had a certified Title V septic system. The owner's attorney failed to pay the contractors and refunded the monies to the seller, to the best of my knowledge, erroneously. The current resident has not only filed an erroneous plan for his swimming pool and made changes after the fact, he has made changes to a hot tub location, in fact, which was never permitted, is not currently permitted. He has been intruding with an electrical line on the 100-foot setback from the Charles River. It's affecting the Conservation Commission. So it just goes on and on. And this all goes to the question of, we do have in the town code the right to assess fines. A year and a half ago, I spoke with town council on this, and she earnestly stated that she hoped we would not use these mechanisms because of the complexity of it. So this results in a very simple question. We have regulations that are on the town. We have state regulations. We have even federal regulations that go to the safety of water, which, by the way, is a constitutional requirement in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's in the Constitution to provide citizens safe water. To what extent do you wish to allow these situations to go on unpursued, or do you wish to come up with a methodology to deal with it? And that's something for tonight.
Right, so Mr. Clark, we really appreciate this update. It's been very informative and, you know, clearly there are regulations that we need to look at. But I think your point is well taken, that these are data points and, you know, at another meeting, not this evening, it's probably a better venue for us to
I don't
discuss
feel
these
comfortable
issues.
discussing the
Yep, that's
details.
fine.
No,
I think Rob's point
so
is fine.
we very much appreciate, you know, all the work that you're doing in the Board of Health and all the work that the Water Committee is doing as well. And, you know, again, our mission here is to keep citizens informed, and we will, you know, follow up at another meeting to
And
figure out the right
In
process.
that light, I'd like to inform you that today you commenced work on a completely redone, dramatically increased website.
I'll have to check it out.
No,
No, it's not live yet.
It's going to be months.
Okay.
But that our focal point is to create a location that new residents, particularly those who come from towns where it is unlike here, where they have
Town
well,
water and
town
sewer.
water or MWRA water and sewage and other aspects. And this will be guidance for the new resident.
Excellent idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
With-
Jerry.
Can I just
Jerry,
say
with
one thing very
with regard,
quickly?
with,
That is that if you look at the timeline of the RFI responses to the issuance of the RFP, to Mr. Clark's point that even though that required, we would certainly have to get town council's opinion on it, they're going to be talking about a very short timeframe. So
Yep.
we're going to need support in getting a quick turn.
Okay.
so with regards to the conversation for that needs to happen prior to August 16th.
Well, we would like it at least a week before.
August 16th.
Right, because any suggestions that are offered by town council, we would have to integrate into the document.
All right.
Understood. Understood. Then we will, the others, the 9 out of 10 points that you just mentioned are all probably separate items that we would take under advisement.
Right.
And with regards to the climate change and the 37 pages that you sent me yesterday that I read each one, and on page 29, under the third or fourth bullet point, it said, the selectmen will need to sign the form.
That is correct. That is the municipal vulnerability plan, which is why I said we didn't do it last year.
I got that. I got it.
I have not read it yet.
Robin has not read it yet, and then I'm sure Bob is going to be
You hit exactly the
thrilled.
reason why
I
I
know.
suspended activity on
I
it
know.
until this.
Here, with respectfully, and I speak for the board, don't bury the lead.
Jared.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol, Justine, thank you. Carol Cherico is also a part of this, and to your board. Ron Myron. I'm sorry, Justine, can you say that again?
There's
Great, 6 of you.
Just
So again, for the people at home and for the people who are listening and
It's the Water Study Committee.
the Water Study Committee, thank you very much. Moving on, Selectmen's updates. Dave, is there any specific order that you would like to begin with regards to the
Well, why don't
meetings?
we just start the order that's listed on the agenda as good
No,
as
as
any?
good as any. So the Carroll Community Study Process, the Carroll Community Facility Initiative. We have, as a board, met 3 different times this summer with regards to these agenda items and the updates on these agenda items. We have begun the process. We have begun the process of getting ourselves in order so we are complying with the guidelines that were established under town meeting. So we have a very specific set of boundaries that we have to stay within with regards to the Carroll Community Center. We have to establish the committee, which we will do very shortly. We have to also establish a timeline. We also have to establish, which we are all in the process of doing these simultaneously, our mission statement for the process.
Or a charge.
Our mission statement, our objectives. So we're looking at goals, objectives, we're looking at the initiatives. We're staying within the boundaries. We are going to listen to the constituents. We have had numerous discussions, as I've mentioned, at our open meetings. We are very mindful of the constituents who use the facility. We are going to keep all of those constituents informed. We feel as a board that our top priority is communications. So we have had these meetings under the open meeting law, so everybody can participate and people
our
can read
minutes
the meetings.
are posted online as well. We are in the process of developing a mission statement or the charge for the committee. Without that charge, it's very difficult to determine what the committee's going to look like and what the committee should do. And I think we thought the first meeting we would get our charge out there, but it's much more difficult to write one paragraph that's concise and then have bullet points that follow on. I think we're almost there, and when we do have a charge that's ready for us to share with everybody, we will. We also, in these meetings, have determined that the future of Carroll should be done with a committee, and maybe we should utilize something similar that was done the first time around, where committees would be focused on certain, really on certain aspects of the renovation to the building or the needs of the building, and then have those committee do a deeper dive into that, and then report back to the Board of Selectmen. We also, as a team here, we've also recognized that there are 3 of us and a lot of initiatives that we have to take care of. So amongst ourselves, we're going to divide and conquer, so to speak. But foremost, we are going to make sure that everything we do is transparent and that we communicate back at all of our meetings, the progress that we make with respect to these initiatives. Do you want to add something?
Well, I think 2 things. I think, one of the things that I think we want to do is leverage work that has been done.
Exactly.
We don't necessarily want to go back
And
and
recreate
reinvent the wheel. So I think that'd be, that's an important consideration. And then I guess the other thing is, and I'm not, the things that Robin and John have talked about are things that have been in discussion and not decided. So it's still some things that we have to work through.
Otherwise, we would be presenting.
Otherwise, we'd have a presentation, and then I think the other thing that sort of, that concerns me a bit goes back to the amendment to Article 15 at town meeting. It is very clear that we have to be very, very accurate and very precise about how money is spent on work that's being done on this issue. It's less clear to me that the committee or committees could look at 1 or 2 or 3 options. It's the committees themselves and their charges, I don't think, are constrained. So it's going to be interesting to do that.
Right. It's the funds, the expenditure of the funds that we have
the
to
funds that we
trace.
have to be very careful about. And then the last thing is, I think we have a consensus, although, we just, again, at the meetings, is that we think we're going to start with the needs and space and needs assessment, so that we have,
Right, programming, right.
so that we have a firm platform to launch the committee's work.
And we've been going.
How are you forming your committees and how are you getting out to the public? 'Cause
Well, we haven't started
We
yet.
haven't done
no,
it.
but you were saying you had all,
Well, I didn't say, I said
No, I
these
meant
are ideas,
oh, okay.
and we
You haven't
are.
had meetings then yet?
No.
We don't even have a charge that
Okay.
that is final.
Okay.
I think,
And how are
I'm sorry, go ahead.
and how are committees going to be formed? Just by people who are raising their hands that they'd like to be on the committee? Is that something?
We have heard from people who've raised their hand to say they would like to be on the committee. We've reached out to people who are already constituents. I've had conversations with people who have been through this before. This study has been done. The study process. Studies have been done. Plural, thank you. We, as a board, we're in a difficult position from the standpoint of this has been done before, but it hasn't been done 3 times, Justine, at least 3 times. There's a timeline since from 2006 to today of how many different engineering firms the town has hired to study Carroll. There are engineering firms, there are roofing companies, there are masonry companies, window companies, energy companies. The town has, I believe I counted 26 different firms that have been paid by the town of Dover just to do studies for particular types, whether it's been air conditioning, heating, you name it. We've touched it so many times. What we are very mindful of is the town has changed. It's a different time. And so we want to be mindful of what's been done. We want to be respectful of the people who are using the facility. We want to be respectful of the town's general feel. So to do that, we're being very methodical and very cautious of being sure whether we're setting up, as Robin and Bob both have alluded to, the subcommittees, but being mindful that we do not go outside the boundaries. We are very fortunate in the fact that Dave Ramsey has been through all of the studies to live to tell the story of all the studies. And Greer has done the request, the proposal request for
I was thinking about that.
half of the firms designing, engineering, consulting companies that we've used. So we have a tremendous amount of experience at it. However, as you have heard, this is a different time, but we want to do it properly. So
And we want
to be
a decision to be reached, so it has to be clear and concise, it has to be needs-driven, and we have to take all the emotional baggage that exists around Carroll and put it aside so that we can ultimately bring to the town, we have discussed at a special town meeting so that this can be one issue that everybody in town can vote on and be familiar with. And we believe that an end product has to be something concise that gives the town a choice that's based upon need and not emotion. And that's what we're going to try to do.
What's your timeline? It seems very, so much to do.
It's a good question, and one of the things, let me answer it by this way, Camille. One of the things that we didn't want to do was to constrain ourselves in the timeline of town meeting next year. We agreed very early on that that was something, if we attempted to do that and didn't get it right, and if for whatever reason something fell out of sequence, that could be a recipe for disaster. So I apologize if that's not the answer, the right answer, but it's the answer that we began with, so we didn't paint ourselves into a corner. So our hope is to do, as Robin just described, a separate town meeting to have it be the sole item at town meeting.
Thank you.
Can you identify yourself?
Sure. Let's go. I'm sorry.
John
Thank
Hall,
you.
Susan Joanne Conley,
Hi,
Cranberry
Joanne.
Lane. Hi. I respectfully submit that you go to the boards of the town agencies that are in the building
That's
and
part of the
using it.
plan.
Because the boards, Park and Rec, made it very clear, one of the reasons they didn't vote for things was they were never asked. And I think as the COA board speaks the same way, we have never, to the best of my knowledge, been asked what are our needs, what are our wants, what are our desires, how would we like to see it. So I would hope that we would have representation on these committees and so forth, so that we can feed in appropriately.
It's not only the town departments that utilize that building.
Absolutely.
It's what we want to focus on again is not only the needs today of the town, but to get a professional to help us with what could potentially be the needs 20 years from now. Because if we're going to ask the town to spend or invest, make a significant investment, we need to be able to bring to the town a value proposition. We need to let people know multiple value propositions. So for us, and it's not only the town departments in there, it's coming back to everybody in this building that helps run the town, and also getting their input as to, is there space that you need that we don't have in town? So whatever we do, it has to support the community at large, and not just support certain special interest groups. And that's why we feel so strongly that we have to spend a lot of time on our charge so that we are able to articulate what the end product is that we want, and then work backwards trying to get there. And to Bob's point, there's been a lot of work that has been done, and why redo it if it's been done? So we also, we also will go back and reread again, and make sure that we do look at the work that's been done, but also look at the future. Because there seems to be some momentum, and I think it's really important for us as a board to get it right. And then let the people of Dover, the citizens of Dover, decide what they want to do.
It's definitely our intent to have Park and Rec here, Council on Aging here, to have all the boards that use, the town boards that use it, because I heard the same thing that you heard, and I think Robin and I were sitting right next to each other at town meeting, and we looked at each other immediately when we heard the people at Park and Rec say that. So I'm going to certainly give them the opportunity to come and explain to us how they never heard from us.
Everything that's happened is water under the bridge.
Right.
And
So-
so I
so
think
really,
we
the-
need to
the
wipe
driver
the
was the
slate
space.
forward. Right, we
Yes,
just
it is
want to,
discussed
right,
but-
exactly. But those are excellent points, and this has to be a community effort. If there's support, grassroots, if there's support in the community, we can get something done, right? And so it's imperative that this time, not that it wasn't done right, it could be a numerous factors that brought us to where we are today, but we know where we are today, we know what we're trying to accomplish, so let's see how we can get there.
Yes. Thank you very much for all the comments. For the town administrator search, we have entered the process of the conversations with our town council. So we are, as a board, going to obviously rely heavily upon direction from town council in the process of the search, in the process of what type of firm that we look to help us with this, with the search. It's going to be a monumental job to replace Mr. Ramsey. I don't know if it can be done, but we're going to do our best. The part that we are really, we're very pleased to have in this whole process is Greer. We have an assistant town administrator who, in the absence of our town administrator, is our town administrator. And we are going to convince Greer to stay under any circumstances that we possibly can imagine. So we have a tremendous person who is here and who can do many of the things that need to be done. So there'll be a point in time where we may have a town administrator and an assistant town administrator, and then just an assistant town administrator who is the acting town administrator. So
Mr. Chairman, you failed to mention that there are times when the assistant town administrator acts on my behalf, even when I'm in the building. And I'm grateful.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad you said that, and I didn't. But we will do that, and we have had conversation with town council. We've had conversation with town council who handles our HR and our personnel issues. So we will be moving very quickly along those lines. So,
And so in our discussions regarding a town administrator search, we talked about how important it is to get the right person. And so as part of our discussions, we're going to look also and have some contingency plans in place, because the last thing we want to do is just put a warm body in the spot. So we're going to be working not only with Greer, who's very important, but with all town employees to get this right for everyone, for the citizens of Dover as well as for us. And we're going to embark on a very similar process to the one that was utilized for the police chief, or the one that's utilized
Similar for school superintendents.
superintendents. So these processes by law have to be done all in open meeting settings. And the first step is finding the right search firm to assist us in finding candidates to interview.
There are a number of
Right,
them now. They're all advertised in the weekend, I believe.
Right.
So,
Right.
they're wonderful.
But we have to get the good ones, right?
Right.
So
Yes.
it's making sure that we get the right search firm, and then putting a similar process in place that was done for the police chief.
the good news, the benefit that we have as a board is the three of us, have all been on search committees for the superintendent.
Two of you.
Two of you.
One of us
One of
has
us
not.
are on the search committee for.
No one.
No, I thought that. Gee.
We'll put you on this one.
Yeah.
We are our candidate.
That could be the best idea of the evening.
Yeah.
And Greer has done the
Numerous.
searches, as has Mr. Ramsey. So we have a seasoned staff.
And you handled a lot of the HR function in the
Our
townhouse.
Our
Right,
office,
right,
the treasurer's office,
right.
yes.
Right. So
we
you
do
were
between the
very,
two.
very familiar.
Yes, and we do most of the recruiting.
Right.
If elected boards would like us to assist, we do, and usually, most often they do now, so,
Right.
yeah.
Well, you've done a really great job finding, very qualified replacements for the positions that.
And clearly satisfied, because most of the people have been here 8 years, 10 years, more years. I think that for them, this is a very good place to work.
And I think last night Mr. Ramsey had mentioned in a meeting that it was 20 years in August, right? And so it's going to be a really big change for the townhouse, for everyone. Like the first week you come back in January and I don't see Dave's car, that's how I'm going to work.
You might see it, Mrs. Hunter, I might just by force.
They wake up and just say, I just love
Like that Sunday you showed up.
So, I think it's going to be a big change, and it's just really important to get the right person to lead the competent staff that we have in town.
I just think that and I agree everything with what Mrs. Hunter said. Oh, God.
Well, I know Weston and Acton now have
Exactly,
hired.
right.
Yes.
And Wellesley as well?
I'm not, Wellesley's had an executive director for some period of time. She used to be Mr. Ramsey's assistant over in Lincoln.
Right, I think I met her at the last,
Like,
and then I did.
Yes, yeah. So-
Well, this is a very good segue to the rail trail update, because it's something that our town administrator was part of last night. And just to set the stage for the rail trail update, we have made tremendous progress in the past 60 days with regards to the MBTA. We have met with numerous attorneys from the MBTA. We've been in constant contact with the MBTA over the past 60 days. It was quite literally reinventing the wheel with the MBTA. And the MBTA had one lease, one way. We asked for something very different. We were charged from town meeting in 2017 to get a very specific segmented lease, which we promised the town of Dover we would do, and we are very, very close to that lease being something we can accept. So, Dave, would you like to give us a brief update, or is
I'm going to defer to Mrs. Hunter.
So,
She was there too?
right, So we met last night. It was a very good meeting. We met with Friends of the Dover Greenway. Just as an update, the status of the lease, we did receive a markup from the MBTA. We responded to their comments. We got a little oops email from them yesterday evening saying that there were comments in the files from some of their other reviewers. So we thought we would be able to actually present a lease this evening, but it's still going through some review. And until we've cleared all our attorney's points, our attorney has advised us not to make that lease public. But once we have a lease where all the terms are agreed to, we will provide a cumulative markup, which we will put on the town website from the lease that was put on the town website before the meeting to what we have today. Just some really high-level points. There were a couple of non-starters. If the MBTA would not permit us to lease the section of the trail that town meeting gave us authorization to develop, that was going to be a non-starter. To date, of course, we have not seen all the comments. That appears to not be an issue at all. And, you know, our attorney is confident that we're going to be able to clear the comments that we've been given by the MBTA. So that's good news. The reason for our meeting yesterday evening was, as we are now beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel, we also will need to get the lease approved before the end of the fiscal year. So we do have a pretty tight timeline. So what we wanted to do was to re-engage with Friends of the Dover Greenway. We had talked at town meeting about putting a memorandum of understanding in place with them, basically so that we all understand the rules of the road, what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, what are the funds that they need to raise so that we can begin the process. As you recall, we made a commitment at town meeting that the lease would not be executed until the funds were available to the town and had been gifted to the town. We also went to the MBTA and asked them to provide us with a license so that we could begin to do some of the other due diligence or more extensive due diligence that needs to be done on the on the trail. And for that, Friends of the Dover Greenway also will need to raise the funds for that. So yesterday evening, I think we got to a point where we agreed conceptually upon the terms of the MOU. Basically, really high level, we agreed to have an advisory committee that would have a member of the Friends of the Dover Greenway, a member of the town administration, and a member of the Board of Selectmen that would just make sure that all the pieces were properly in place. We also agreed that upon execution of the license, we need to have the funds in the bank, so to speak, from Friends of the Dover Greenway to do that work. And that work entails, a much more extensive title search, making sure that the specs and plans get done correctly. One of the issues that came up at that meeting was, I'll give you guys food for thought because I also have a package that I'm going to scan in to give to you so we can discuss it on Wednesday night, was the Friends of the Greenway in light of the time sensitivity that we have to complete this project. Those of us at the meeting wanted to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that we move forward with Beals and Thomas to prepare the spec documents and to update the costs. So the Friends of the Dover Greenway that were at the meeting, they amongst themselves decided that they did not want to go out to bid again. That would take another 2 months off the process. Right. And everybody felt that Beals and Thomas really had a lot of knowledge about the project, and it probably made the most sense to go back to them. but I don't want you, we can discuss it on Wednesday because you don't have in front of you
Right.
the most
Right,
recent
right.
cost estimates or drafts of the MOUs, which I will send to you prior to making a decision. But that is a long decision that we do need to make pretty quickly.
Okay.
I'd just like to add, with regards to what Robin was just covering in the design phase, and the design phase being the first phase and the most critical phase, and the one that we don't want to go, no one wants to be delayed, because that would cause maybe problems that could be too much to overcome. I just want to state that, so everybody here and listening at home, the design function is under the professional guidance of the town. So it's not...
And municipal
guidance, right. So it's under the professional umbrella of the town. So it's not like we are in any way abdicating that to another group. That is something we will control.
And that's why I made the point of saying that as part of this MOU, there is an advisory group that is going to come back to the board with any recommendations.
I would just also like to say thank you to Stephen Anderson, our town council, who was here last night, to Anderson Krieger, the firm, to Mark Boyle at the MBTA, to Teresa Patton at the MBTA. These are attorneys that we have been working very, very closely with, and it seems like on a daily basis over the past 60 to 90 days. And Robin and Bob and I, we have put in a lot of hours on this. This has been a topic that we have dealt with now for 5 meetings, in our planning meetings and our board meetings, and then obviously all of last year. So this is a major item on our agenda, and one that we take very seriously for all parties. We want to make sure we get this right, and we will.
And transparency is...
And transparency, come in.
It has nothing to do with that, but is the Council on Aging on the agenda tonight?
Yes.
Yes. You're asking for money,
I certainly am.
so then you'd be on the agenda.
Okay, I didn't know for sure. I was
Yes.
told it was 7:25.
It was.
Oh, okay. Because I had started. That's okay.
I apologize. We are.
I don't mind.
Thank you.
John, can I make one comment or?
Go ahead.
Okay.
But you have to identify
Horsey,
yourself.
Hayden Terrace, with Friends of the Dover Greenway. I just thank you for getting the ball rolling and keeping this moving and the momentum that's now behind it. We greatly appreciate that. And I also just want to let you know, if the board decides to go with a different organization, not Bills and Thomas, we fully support that as well. We don't have any preference. I mean, just in talking, you were just saying because Bills and Thomas has been involved,
And
but
the time, like 2 month
The timeline.
delay. that they-
yeah, so,
it just makes
yeah, and we
sense.
totally understand the timeline, but if you decided it's best to send it out for an RFP and you want to take that time to do that, we fully support that decision as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Why don't we jump down to the...
Yes, Camille, that's and I again apologize for the time.
That's all right.
Just,
I was wondering if that was happening or not.
It has to happen,
It has
it's
to
on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
So reserve fund transfer for the Council on Aging.
Right.
And Mr. Ramsey, can you brief us on the reserve fund transfer for the Council on Aging?
Well, actually, if I could defer to Ms. Johnson on this, if they're looking at doing their newsletter a different way and distributing it more broadly. So with that, if I could.
Okay, thank you. Well, the Dover Council on Aging is embarking on the process of updating the Council on Aging newsletter. This is how it has been.
Okay.
And over the time, this is February 2017, and we've been trying to pick around and do around and fix it up and all that kind of stuff. And this is the June one. But we decided that this is certainly not what we want. And so we embarked on making this into something very nice, very smart, and sending it out to various people. So the current version has served the needs of the town for many years. Now it's time to update it and bring it in. Bring it to fruition anyway. So the board of the council sat around and talked about this for a number of years. In September, we finally decided we were going to do something about it.
So in September, we started the process. And to change the newsletter, and brought it up to the board, and the board said, great, let's do it. And then in October and November, we asked the directors in Westwood and Sherman, who had just changed theirs and made theirs really snappy and up to date. And they changed it to bi-monthly. So we asked for copies, we gave them to our own board, and the board looked around and compared them to what we were doing. And they said, yes, we really must get moving on this. So we asked them for the names of their printers and the monthly cost, which they were very happy to give us, and they shared that with us. And during December and January, we started talking with the printers. We interviewed 2 printers, one who does Westwood and one that does Sherburne, and the one who has been our printer for the last, I don't know how many years, he has been the printer. And Janet gave him all the specifications that we needed, and he is not able to do the work, especially the color work, which is what we want. We don't have color work in this. And so the two printers, we decided to go with the one from Medfield. February and March, we decided on Ivana Tazi, who was going to, she was suggested as someone in the town who could do design work, and she does beautiful design work. If anybody has seen the work that she's done for the Dover Library, for the town, and other town boards. She's very, very talented. And during March and April, we made mock copies to share with the board. Again, we're on board for approval. In April and May, we selected our printer, received the cost for the new newsletter, and the board approved the newsletter and the cost and everything else. So now the need is for the financial backing to the town. We couldn't have added it to our original budget because in November we did not have the number of all the things that we needed in place. At the same time, there were members of the co-op board who started working with SOAR to survey the town and see what town folks would suggest for both COA and the town, how to get more people involved with COA, how they would get them to know about COA. And Joanne is one of the members that was on that committee, and she'll tell you a little bit about, because the SOAR has just finished their work and they're in the final stages of presenting it to us, the final stages of the survey and what's going on. So Joanne's going to talk about what they found and how we were impacted by it.
Joanne, I am vice chair of COA as well, but was lucky enough to become part of the needs assessment, and I think most of you know and probably were interviewed by the committee. And just as a quick update, our mission was really find who are the seniors in town, what do they do, how effective is COA, are good, bad, and different, just explore as much as we could. And how do the senior citizens really fit into the fabric of the town was a real important mission of it. And I think we did a pretty good job, and you're going to hear a lot about it in the fall, because we hope to be presenting the whole thing to you. But I thought it was important to come because there were a couple of talking points that were really like, wow, to us. And so just quickly what we did was we had individual interviews, we did group interviews, young people, old people, everything in between, and reached out to a lot of people. But then probably one of the most important things we did was those that were on the committee that were part of COA and Friends of COA. We split into teams and we went off to many towns and we interviewed them. We put together a whole list of what we wanted to find out, what they did, what we could, comparison. And that's where we really found a lot of information. And we have a lot of comparative charts that you'll be receiving eventually too. But the thing that I think is really cements our need for this newsletter and why it's so important is we learned a lot. But there were two things that really stuck out. in my mind and in a lot of other people's minds, 60% of the seniors that responded, and by the way, we had about 500 respondents, which is unbelievable for, you know, a survey of this kind, to get that kind of a vote. So we were thrilled with that. But they feel that they're largely invisible in this town. And I know you say that to a lot of people, you say, well, they don't feel like they're respected, but it's true. It is pervasive feeling, and it's hard to...
And they want to be visible.
And they want to be. We're dealing with 23% of the town. We're dealing with past selectmen. We're dealing with warrant committee people. We're dealing with school committee people. We're dealing with people that have paid taxes for years. We're dealing with, you know, relatively newcomers, although we don't get a tremendous number of older people that come to Dover just because of lack of facilities really for seniors. But another thing that came to you was many people feel that you come to Dover, you educate your kids, and you leave. It's not true. It's not true at all. 23% of our community are seniors, which is pretty amazing. So the other thing that came out from the survey is 80%, and these are respondents, I'm taking it right from reading just because I took it right from the thing, 80% of younger residents, and these are people just below and young, you know, younger with their families, were totally unaware of the senior population, what the size of our community is. They're oblivious to their needs, their wants, and their activities. That is pretty amazing when you think of the size of our town, and that it then puts into perspective the fact that 60% of the seniors feel like they're invisible, and I think they are. So what we took away from that is what's important. Number one, we're not communicating who we are, and so we have a job to do. But we also feel as though we really needed to step up how we communicated, that was very important. We need to make the people of this town understand that seniors are not what, you know, we used to perceive seniors as being. I mean, I have friends in my 80s who are still traveling all over the world, play golf and ski and do everything else. That's not a typical image of a senior. But seniors are very different today, and we have a lot of needs, a lot of wants, but they're reasonable. But we also really want to be involved, and our minds are sharp as can be. I'm not speaking personally necessarily, but I mean, we're different from what is perceived as being seniors. And I think what we're saying to the board is, we need you to back us. And we would like you to, moving forward, we'd like you to help us blend the fabric of the senior community into the overall fabric of the town of Dover. And I think it can be done, it can be done beautifully. We live on a street with mostly young people. We moved there many, many years ago, and our kids grew up with, and we're very involved with everybody there. And that's how I think most seniors want to be. So we're willing to do our job, but we ask, this is really important. And I'd just like to show you, I just had one from this print. This is the newest iteration of what we come back with. And you'll see the quality of every aspect of it is what we're trying to step up. Don't forget to and, you know, and that's it.
You know what's really interesting? There seems to be a theme throughout the town about how to be more effective communicators.
Yes.
When we got together, our first meeting, that was our #1 priority.
Yeah.
How do you better communicate? Mr. Springett went and talked to the schools, and the schools are trying to figure out how they can better communicate. So I think if all of us, you know, work together, I think the schools, the selectmen, the seniors, all of us, if we can work together, and if we're all driven by we all want to figure out how to communicate better, I think that's a start. We have something in common that we all want to work towards.
But I think there's also a need to really, in today's world, to have a greatly integrated community of the youth and the seniors and everything in between. And, you know, we are trying to become more involved with the schools, and we're trying to bring the high school, junior high and high school kids in and help us with technology and the things we're not also. So I think it is a good thing, and I think the Carroll School actually could help to be a really effective tool in doing a lot of that.
Well, Mr. Springer had a visit at the Natick Community Center.
Yeah,
And he...
Yeah, it's a pretty vibrant place.
It was amazing.
Right.
You know, I think the interesting thing to me is it's interest-driven, right? All the things that we do are interest-driven. So if you find things that are shared interests, it's much easier to build that sort of network that you're talking about, build in community. You know, and so people may like bowling and I may like golf, but and I'm going to hang out with the golfers.
And I'll be right with you.
You know, and so, but I think it's important to recognize that because, you know, you build interest, you have shared interest, and then you grow from there. And it's harder to do that. I mean, a lot of the, you know, I heard 23%, the 70% who are here for schools. I mean, they're driven that way, and it consumes, as you probably, I remember, it consumes a tremendous amount of energy and effort and thought. So, I mean, I'm happy to hear you say you're reaching out to the schools, because I think it's really important to do that.
Both Camille and I are former teachers.
Yeah. No, I think that's because there's clearly value in that kind of thing. But it is, communication is it's like, you know, everybody thinks we should communicate more. I think outreach, I think, is one of the more effective ways of communicating. And making yourself available and visible in the communities are very, very important.
Two other things, I wanted to mention the new newsletter will go out to everybody in town. The old newsletter did not. This one would go out to everyone so that that's not the final copy.
It's a nicely designed.
It's
Is there an e-version? Because I only do
It will be, because, you know, and that's one of the things that came back too, that there are a lot of people who feel we should have a good website and so forth. So there are a lot of different things that have come out of this fabulous committee that worked on it. And it was really a fun thing and a pleasure to be part of. But I just felt like it was really important to understand tonight that there's a need for this kind of thing. And that we all need to, you know, we need to step up our game and speak up for what we want, what we need, and who we are today. So.
Well, we hear you, we appreciate you, we really do, and I think as evidence of what you saw us do this evening with just giving a little bit more clarity to the people who are in the room, that's one of the things that we heard, and we're out asking, what can we do? How can this be better? And one of the things we heard is make it a little bit more, from a communication standpoint, tell us who's in the room.
Interactive.
We want you to know we're listening. We're trying to immediately, as you saw tonight, listen to what you say and make it a little bit better. And so we're here to help you, and we thank you.
Your new design is on the right track.
Yes. So most importantly, we want to give you money. Most importantly, we want to hear what you're asking for. And we want to, I will entertain a motion to approve the reserve fund transfer for the Council on Aging in the amount of $5,000 for your $6,000. Did you change that?
I wrote it, and I could put another 2 for me.
If anyone else wants to, we
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
And then that will go into our budget for next year going forward.
The one thing I would suggest, because this also goes to the warrant committee, you may want to give them a package for them as well. Because it's very, you can take it back.
Yes.
So that way you don't have to waste paper, but it's a great effort.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, right.
I'll scan it for you.
You get a,
Do you want something for your, I mean,
I would like to just keep one copy of this if you don't mind, just so we have it for the record of everybody.
well,
No,
thank you for your time
Thank
and
you.
for your money.
it's the town money.
Yes.
You can thank the town.
The citizens of
Thank
the
you.
taxpayers.
So we're gonna go back to the, and thank you both.
Can I just ask one, how do you find out about these other meetings for the Carol?
They're all posted.
Posted.
They're posted.
Posted on the
We've been
website.
doing them early in the morning, so our next meeting is actually on
Wednesday.
morning at 7.
Next Wednesday.
Next Wednesday, next Wednesday, the 18th.
Thanks so much.
But just
Love to see you.
check the website and the minutes are on there as
Around as
well.
well.
Okay, great, thank
So
you.
we're gonna go back to the retroactive authorization
Oh, we did.
to execute the EPS document. That was where we left off.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
So I thought we did that.
No, we didn't. We did the.
We did the water.
We did the water.
Oh,
water grant.
yeah.
So we're on the vote retroactively
What is the-
to authorize chairman
Why don't
to
you make a
execute.
motion?
I was gonna make a motion, but you were talking.
I'll make a motion to vote to authorize the chairman to execute the EPS documents.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Because I was convinced we had done it before.
We did.
No, we didn't do that. Even I knew that we didn't do that.
Fall winter meeting schedule.
What is what has been the tradition on meeting schedule?
Thursday nights. We like.
Twice a month or once a month?
Every other Thursday.
Okay. So you want to do the 6th and the 20th, and the 1st and the 3rd, or the 2nd and the 4th?
You typically go month by month.
And
People have conflicts and more vacations.
Right, I would say, and we try to avoid Jewish holidays, or any religious holidays, which I think if we do the 6th and the 20th,
we're fine.
we're fine.
Yeah.
6th and 20th.
Right.
In October 11th and the 25th.
It's early Christmas, 25th.
That's fine.
In November,
Do you want to
So
do the
we've
1st and the
got-
15th, right?
the first, would be,
that
You
gives
want
us
to
a
avoid
week.
Thanksgiving.
we want to avoid Thanksgiving, so what about the 8th and the 29th?
Could do
That works.
could do that too. So then you you run into an issue that's in December, 29th and the 6th, back to back.
So we would go on December,
Unless you only wanted to have one meeting, the 13th. Is it mandated we have two?
no,
It usually is very helpful because in the fall,
Right, there's.
Yeah, no, because you're doing budgets and all that stuff.
The
yeah.
operating budgets are typically due mid-December, back to the warrant committee.
so Greer, would you recommend the 6th and the 20th, or?
I would.
I
Yeah.
would, right.
January, I think we should take it off.
Isn't your boat going to be in the Caribbean in January?
Yeah, it is. I have to take it down.
We could meet on Bob's boat in the Caribbean on the 10th and the 24th.
That works.
How's that?
Yeah.
February, we have to be mindful of
School vacation.
school vacation, and also February is, we're due, aren't we due for all of the warrant articles?
Well, that's in January.
Does it, I mean, is it,
that all gets, don't worry about that.
Yeah,
Okay,
That all-
that's
I
okay.
mean, is it,
We can work it around your meetings, that's okay.
okay.
I know the warrant committee typically is the end of the second week in December for operating budgets, but we can be flexible with that.
could we meet during school vacation week?
We can meet.
We can meet, it's just if
So the-
anybody has needs, to travel, then we meet.
I mean, for February, the 7th and 21st would work for me.
Yeah, it works for me too.
Mr. Chairman?
I do not have kids in the schools, in the high schools any longer, so.
Wife's on vacation.
It's a whole different game.
My wife's on vacation, so she may be somewhere, but we'll, if
Well, if
that
we
needs to
need
be,
to
we can
adjust.
address that. Certainly I will know by December. So March
7th and 20th.
7th and 21st?
Yeah.
Now, in March, well, we can change it because we'll have the open here, but that's on a Monday night. so
That's on
we're not-
Mondays, right, so
so
the clock is set.
Right.
April is so far away.
And it'll be here before you come in.
So this is all getting ready for town meeting.
Yes.
Right.
So 11th and 25th?
That would work, because then we'd miss the Passover.
In May, we'll
When's town meeting, the 6th?
Sixth.
It's the excuse me, it's the,
Sixth.
6th. So if you do it the 25th, my only question would be to check with the moderator, because last year he wanted it blocked, so it was a little bit closer to town meeting. We
Okay.
can check with the moderator.
Right, and then adjust accordingly.
Comfortable with
Right,
that, right?
right.
Now we go on vacation.
Or we could do the second too, the second. if
Yeah,
we
you could
needed to.
hold the second, yeah.
Right.
Okay, I'll check with
Right,
Mr. O'Kenny.
okay.
So you want, so we'll just, maybe the 2nd?
And then we need a meeting the 16th, right, of May?
The 6th, yes.
Yes, which would be our,
When is the vote, is the 20th?
Right,
Okay, so 2 and 16 work.
yeah.
Yeah.
Done.
Okay.
You're on a roll, John, let's go. Keep it going.
here we go. Thank you. Appointments. So, Dave, I'm going to read the appointments. Reappoint Chris Paulson to the Recycling Committee for a 3-year term ending in 2021. Reappoint Boyden Glidden to the Open Space Committee, 3-year term ending 2021. Frederick Hartman to the Open Space Committee for a 3-year term ending 2021. And I'm happy to add to appoint Candace McCann to the Fence Review. Fence Viewer, sorry, Fence Viewer.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
and it goes without saying to thank all these volunteers who have been willing to be reappointed for all their hard work, and we appreciate them, we got them.
Thank you all very much. And Mr. Ramsey, I do have, you have some as well.
Starting on page 4. Chief of Communications, Chief McGowan has graciously indicated that was to re-up for another year.
So should we reappoint, I always forget how we do this, should we? Okay, so I make a motion to reappoint Chief McGowan as Chief Communications Officer.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Fast forward to page 8. Both George Junta and Mike Mangieri have graciously agreed to serve another year as groundwater bylaw enforcement agents.
So I'll make a motion to reappoint George Junta and Mike and Jerry to serve a 1-year term as the groundwater bylaw enforcement agents.
Agents.
Second.
It's a mouthful.
All in favor? Aye.
And also at the bottom of that page, the inspector of buildings and zoning enforcement officer, the backup building inspector, inspector of wiring, the deputy inspector of wiring, and the deputy inspector of wiring. All of them have agreed to out for another year.
Great.
So I'll make a motion to reappoint Walter Avalone as the inspector of buildings, Felix Zernal as backup building inspector, Kevin Malloy as wiring inspector, James Norton as deputy inspector of wiring, and Paul Angus as deputy inspector of wiring.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Go, Dave.
Page 10. That's Mr. Spring. Page 10, the Metro West RTA representative, Craig Hughes has agreed to re-up for another year.
So I'll make a motion to reappoint Craig Hughes, sorry, Craig, as Metro
Fred
West
Hughes.
representative,
Second.
RTA representative.
Second.
All in favor?
And while we're on that, Mr. Ramsey, if I may interject, so with me covering warrant and long-range planning, Bob covered the long-range planning meeting last night. And if that's something you are agreed to covering with long-range planning, I would move that we appoint Bob Springett to the long-range planning committee for 2019. 2018-2019.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Before you could say no.
Before you can say, thank you.
And moving ahead to page 13, and it goes over to 14, Chief McGowan is enthusiastically endorsing the reappointment of all his officers as highlighted in yellow.
Do we need to say all their names? No. All right, so then I move that we reappoint the police officers as highlighted in yellow on page 13 and 14 of that summary of appointed and elected officers.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And still on page 14 at the bottom of the page, right to know coordinator, Craig Hughes is again graciously agreed to serve in that capacity for another year.
What is that?
It's a statutory required
It's
position.
it's only available in the right to know.
Goodness. I'm glad she said that.
Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Like to know what?
It's only those.
Just like at home. You don't
Only knows.
have the right to know unless you need the right to know. Oh, God. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's Fred again.
Perfect.
Mr. Hughes is still up on the next page, page 15, superintendent of streets for another year.
Move that we accept Craig Hughes as superintendent of streets for another year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the town accountant, Carol Wyden, has agreed to re-up for another 3 years, even though she will probably most likely be retiring at the end of December, but it is a 3-year appointment.
And
So
Move to accept
yeah, appoint Carol Willman. Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
And then town council, Neil Pickering Cook is agreed to serve in Bill Leahy's stead as he has retired from active practice for the 1-year term, and in Shakir.
And I move that we accept Anderson McCready, town council, Nina Pickering Cook.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Dave, what do we do about you?
My term isn't up until 19, and I'm retiring in December.
Okay.
So that was covered previously.
However, Mr. Ramsey is the Title VI non-discrimination coordinator, if you'd like to reappoint him to that. That is an annual appointment.
I would like to reappoint you to that, and just as a quick aside, in December, that's something that we would reappoint, or can we name an interim person
Yeah, what do we do?
Yes.
in the event?
Move to make the motion.
Yes.
Move to make the motion?
What, make the motion?
Make the motion. I'm sorry. I make the motion that we accept that. Both. For Dave, for both.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Dave, any others?
Couple more, or maybe one more. Let's see. Mr. Angieri, excuse me.
Town engineer?
May I take this call, please?
Yes, go right ahead. Move that we accept Michael Njeri as the town engineer for the term for a year in
Second.
2019. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think that was the only one we got.
Okay,
I think we're good.
excellent.
Thank you very much.
You could also, if you so choose, appoint him as the male ombudsman for another year for, sexual harassment.
And then again, that was, right.
Yeah, as the female.
And I move
I
that
second that.
we, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
And then it will be on the list of things that
Of
we
things.
have to reappoint
Yes,
upon his
we'll take
retirement.
note.
Let me just make a note of that because
Aye.
thank you very much. Or to appoint interim.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Special Charles River School Road Race transfer licenses. Why don't we do the licenses first?
After Charles River, all right.
And then we'll do the Charles River. I have the Charles River in my hand, so. Mr. Springett, would you like to read the request for one-day liquor license that we can all,
Absolutely not.
The list.
the list.
Can we just refer to the list?
We
have to
have to
read
read each one.
Just say the date and
date.
the
You did
location.
a great job last month. I apologize, it seemed like just last week.
Yeah, it seems like we've been together so often. Okay, so make a motion to approve the request for 2018 one-day special liquor licenses. June 20th, BC office meeting and dinner at the Connor Center.
Connor Center.
July 6th, wedding rehearsal and dinner at the Connor Center. July 7th, a wedding at the Connor Center. I hope the rehearsal goes well. July 14th, the Boston Foundation retreat with dinner at the Connor Center. July 16th, the BC Roche Center Conference and Dinner at the Connor Center. July 17th, these guys are BC Roche Center Conference and Dinner at the Connor Center. July 18th, BC Roche Center Conference and Dinner at the Connor Center. July 21st, a wedding from people who met at the BC Connor Center. July 23rd, BC School of Education Conference and Dinner at the Connor Center. July 24th, BC School of Education Conference and Dinner at the Conference Center. July 25th, Master Gardeners Association Summer Meeting at the Elm Bank. July 26th, BC School of Education at the Conference and Dinner at the Connor Center. July 27th, wedding rehearsal dinner at the Connor Center. July 28th, wedding at the Connor Center. August 5th, wedding at the Elm Bank.
Or is the Bank wedding has a meeting or something?
And I move that we accept.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
So we now have Carol, Charles River School Road Race. And request for the Charles River School Road Race, October 14th.
We're expecting 125 runners.
Including children and adults of all ages. And I move that we accept the Charles River School request for the road race.
Would you like to make that, Mr. Chairman, contingent upon the school obtaining an insurance binder listing the town of Dover as an additional insurer?
Thank you.
For $1 million, that was the police chief's recommendation.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Miss Butash. I did not.
So our vote is contingent
And our
upon
vote is
receiving
contingent
that.
upon receiving that.
Yes, yeah.
I leave that,
Follow up and
Mr.
make
Ramsey,
sure
to you
that-
to coordinate with the chief.
Mrs. Pugash.
Mrs. Pugash, Mr. Ramsey has deferred that to you to coordinate with the chiefs.
Okay.
I would move that we accept contingent upon that.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Finish up on the appointments, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
We appointed you to several
Several new responsibilities,
So you
yeah.
are the tree warden, you're the sewer commissioner warden, you're the,
Chairman of the Capital Budget Committee.
That way, Mrs.
It's all documented. all
Mona has it all.
nothing to worry about.
I would worry a lot.
Approve the June 12th open session minutes, which I have read, and Ms. DeShiro did a fabulous job.
I have a new appreciation for this.
Accept a motion to approve the minutes of the June 12th.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye. And citizens' comments.
They all
They all
left.
have- We do have one item that is incumbent upon us to mention, and that is the classic car review, which will happen on Wednesday, the 18th, which the chief has given permission and the veterans have requested.
So where is that going to be?
That's going to be in the lower parking lot here at the townhouse
Oh, that would
on
be fun.
Wednesday from 6 to 8, the 18th.
I believe that's right.
Yeah, the 18th.
Yes.
Wednesday, the 18th, so next Wednesday, evening from 6 to 8. There's, Mr. Springett is the owner of a classic car.
I am.
I was the owner of a 1976 Ford Pinto. Would that classify as?
I got a 51 Mercury.
I was kidding, but I know you have a real classic car.
Yeah, 51 Mercury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
So you
Classic.
gonna-
Which is classic.
No, it's Cindy's car. She has
Right,
to.
I know that.
But it is, there's been a lot of, there have been requests for it. I think it's a great idea. We work closely with the chief and Tom McGill and Sergeant Savage from the post. So
Is
looking
there
forward to it.
food?
There will not be food.
How about donuts?
We could.
Donuts don't qualify, it's a special, it's our own special news source.
Looking
Food
forward to
source.
that.
All right, so let's,
Any other items?
so I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all very much.